WSBA News Time is 8:15. Well, we're going to be talking with Senator Arlen Specter in just a moment or two. And normally it's your turn to make the call today, but we are going to be kind of taking that today and getting into it with Senator Arlen Specter and then Congressman Joe Sestak a little bit later on this morning on this job that was supposedly offered to Congressman Sestak to get out of the race when he entered way back there in May. And he will not come out and say who offered it. But now there's a clamor from around the country, from reporters every day at the White House to, other people who are now saying, tell us what's going on, including Senator Specter himself, who came out and said that this week. And Senator Specter has been asked some questions about his role. Did you ask them to clear the road for you when you switched parties back in May of this past year, or April of this past year? And he said, no, I certainly did not. So there are a lot of questions out there beyond just the race itself right now, Jim.
Yeah, and I can give you a little bit of the backstory on this, too, from Philly.com this morning, reporting that Sestak had been asked by Philadelphia journalist Larry King during a February 19th taping of the show about whether the White House had offered him a job to forego a run against Specter, the preferred candidate, and Sestak at that point answered yes. Since that time, he hasn't provided any additional specifics.
Well, let's find out about some more specifics this morning. Senator Arlen Specter with us in Philadelphia today. Good morning, Senator Specter. Welcome back to York's Morning News.
Good morning, Gary and Jim. Nice to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Great to have you on, as always, and hope you're doing well.
Doing just fine. Jim, vigor and vitality at the top of my game.
All right.
Gotta love that.
Senator, controversy is dogging this election right now, and we're going to have your opponent on a little bit later on this morning. But Congressman Sestak came out and said, yes, I was offered a job by the White House to get out of the race against you. I was reading an article here in CNS today, an interview that you did, and you said, you ought to come out and name names. You said that earlier and nationally. Your thoughts about that? I know you were a former district attorney. This is a pretty serious allegation that you make when someone offered you a job to get out of a race so that, your party could support you.
Well, he has made the charge to get a lot of political mileage out of it, trying to play the role of the underdog without being specific at all with names, dates, and places. But I'll tell you, Gary and Jim, what he's doing here, he's trying to divert attention from the fact that he has not paid the minimum wage to his campaign employees. That is really the issue which has surfaced that he has not answered.
Well,
the minimum wage required by federal and state law is $7.50, and he has campaign workers working for less than $2.50 an hour, as proved by the filings he's made with the Federal Election Commission. And that's a violation which calls for a jail term. And he was on MSNBC earlier this week saying that I'm using words trying to make him look like he's a criminal. Well, I'm not using any words. When you violate a statute that provides for jail, what would he call himself?
Now, here's a question. As the American people look at this, which would you think would be more important to the regular people? Whether a guy was offered a job by a high member of the administration or this particular one on the minimum wage?
Well, I think the minimum wage is far more important, especially when his broad brush smear on the job offer has no specification. Look here.
Do you think
we have some arguments as to who's the real Democrat in this race? You couldn't find a more fundamental principle of the Democratic Party than treating working men and women fairly. That's what the Democratic Party is all about. And a big issue that comes up repeatedly is to raise the minimum wage. And he's voted for it and made grandiose statements about how important it is. But when it comes to his campaign, where he has more than $5 million in the bank, he's paying wages that remind you of the old sweatshop and the plantation. So I think when people talk about a living wage and the minimum wage, that's a lot more important than some nebulous offer that he talks about months after it happened, which the White House has denied, and no specification.
Now, according to the Federal Election Commission, Congressman Sestak pays his brother and two sisters that work for the campaign an average of $3,685 a month, but he pays the staffers not related to him an average of $1,461 a month, which is well below the region's livable wage scale, according to that release.
Well, you just made my case stronger. He has his relatives on the payroll at a decent wage, and the others who work for him, there's one person who worked for him, got so disgusting that he not only quit, but he put it on the blog, saying that he couldn't make ends meet. Just really an indignant blog. You ought to read that one to your listeners.
We don't have, obviously, a horse in this race. We, want to have people have a chance to hear all the candidates, which we do on a regular basis, and try to be fair. So, in fairness, two questions for you. Number one, do you think Congressman Sestak is lying about the White House offering him a job? And number two, when you switched from being a Republican to a Democrat back in April, did you ask the White House to clear the road to make sure nobody else would be out there so you could run as the Democratic candidate and be endorsed by the president and the Democratic Party?
I absolutely did not, and said so at the time, and have said so consistently.
Right.
That I did not ask that the field be cleared, and I'm ready to take on all comers. Listen, Gary and Jim, that's been my whole career. I've had a lot of tough campaigns. I don't back away from a tough campaign. The White House has denied it. No specification. Listen, Sestak has made two big mistakes in this campaign. One, in not paying the minimum wage and not showing up for work. He's missed 127 votes. He has the worst record of any Pennsylvania congressman. Now, those aren't charges. Those aren't allegations. Those are facts. And let him deal with those. And contrast my record in the Senate, where on the big issues I've been with the Democrats perhaps more often than Republicans, against Bork, against warrantless wiretapping, in favor of raising the minimum wage, in favor of SCHIP. You just take a look at the two records, and I'll stand on it.
And yet I want to come back and ask you that next question again. Do you think he was lying? Here's the problem. The White House, Robert Gibbs has been asked repeatedly by Jake Tapper, by Major Garrett, and he continues to kind of peddle it off, and it has the appearance, and you're a DA, you're one of the better ones that we've ever seen out there. Your antennas would have gone up, I think, just like our antennas are going up right now. Why don't they answer that question?
Well, listen, you'll have to ask them.
We try. I took your advice last time. We tried.
I know when I was DA and someone came to me and wanted a warrant of arrest or wanted some action or wanted me to believe that something had happened, they told me where it happened, when it happened,
right,
who was involved, the specification.
Who has the obligation here? Joe Sestak in naming names and telling what happened, or Eric Holder in investigating right now the fact that he brought it up in the first place, or is there a joint responsibility there?
Well, I think the first thing that has to be done is the complainant has to be specific on what is going on. If I was a DA and this came to me, I'd ask for the specification. If the guy didn't give it, I'd say, sorry, there's nothing I can do about it. There's no credibility. When you have something that happened, the first thing you do is make a prompt complaint. A prompt complaint is an indication of credibility. He says it happened last summer, and he mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. You judge for yourself. Let your listeners judge whether that kind of a vague, nebulous complaint stacks up against issues like not showing up for work, missing 127 votes, or not paying the minimum wage.
Well, Senator, when did you first learn about this alleged job offer?
When he was on the Larry King show, and it looked to me like kind of a setup out of the blue months later, and I've been asked about it repeatedly, and glad to comment on it, which I'm doing extensively this morning.
We appreciate that. Yeah.
Wouldn't Representative Sestak have an obligation to have reported this alleged job offer to the Ethics Committee?
Well, I think he would have. That's the point in a prompt complaint. If something happens and you don't complain about it promptly, it is a very substantial indicator of lack of reliability. And he Some people have commented, and listen, this is not nearly as important as the other issues I've mentioned. Some people have commented that it's a violation of federal law. Of course, you have to make a complaint. You have to be specific.
We read an article by Hans von Spakovsky. We actually had him on the show today at 7:10, and he points out that in the Justice Department Criminal Division Handbook, they give to all their federal prosecutors, it specifies that prosecutors can use 18 U.S. Code Section 600 to prosecute corrupt public officials who use government-funded jobs or programs to advance a partisan political agenda. We're having a little bit of that going on, as you know, in Pennsylvania right now with the bonus gate thing. This federal statute makes it unlawful for anyone to directly or indirectly promise any employment, position, compensation, contract, appointment, or other benefit to any person as a consideration, favor, or reward for any political activity or for the support of or opposition to any candidate or political party in connection with any primary election, unquote. That sounds pretty serious to me, that if someone did that and there's a $10,000 fine and up to a year in prison if you are found guilty of that. There are some questions out there by Darrell Issa right now, who's a congressman, that ask about Rahm Emanuel, that ask about the deputy chief of staff, Jim Messina. Your thoughts about that, if those people who would be in support of you were eventually found guilty of offering something even though you didn't have any knowledge of it?
Well, you're asking a very hypothetical question. I would go back to your point of an obligation to make a report if there has been something. There's a crime called misprision of a felony,
right.
Gary and Jim. Misprision of a felony is when you don't report a crime. So you're getting into pretty deep areas here in these considerations.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning, Senator. We're going to have on Congressman Sestak in a moment, and we hope we get back to talking about the issues that really concern us right now here in Pennsylvania. But we need to get by this. We might say donkey in the room right now instead of elephant in the room and see what we can do with that.
Well,
okay?
I'd like to talk about the jobs bill, which I'm pushing. Getting the tax break for steel and the things we're doing on eliminating the payroll tax so small businessmen can go to work.
Well, we're right at the end of our time now.
He was on MSNBC saying that I'm using words that make him look like a criminal. Ask him what he would call himself when he is conclusively shown to have violated a law which calls for a jail term.
All right.
Senator Specter, thank you so much.
We'll look forward to talking about that jobs bill very, very soon with you, Senator. Thank you very much.
I'm available, ready and willing.
We got you. Thanks again, Senator. Take care. Always a pleasure. Senator Arlen Specter with us this morning on New York's Morning News. We'll take a break. We'll come back with much, much more. Congressman Joe Sestak joins us at 8:40 to answer Arlen Specter. WSBA News. Senator Arlen Specter with us this morning on New York's Morning News. We'll take a break. We'll come back with much, much more.